Hello everyone, mates. It's Mozart on the line. Right then, let's break down yesterday's Red Monday. Yesterday's Red Monday. So, in the end, what have we got? I picked up all my positions in places on the Telegram channel. I bought back in with my own hands. I bought back Bitcoin with my own hands, but it was really close to the entry point. I bought back Ethereum with my own hands, and it was quite close to the entry point. I had Salam. So right now, I've basically got a full set of positions. Yes, in the end, you could say that it would have been better to wait, but it isn't always the same. Sometimes it's just better to buy in manually, because when the price doesn't reach your limit by $50 to $100 and then shoots up, it's more frustrating than if it goes through with a decent margin. Bitcoin is set at 96,326, with an average entry stop based on the closing candle at 89899. And as seen, Ethereum is the same. Ethereum dropped quite a bit yesterday, even triggering the stop, the so-called stop trigger. Here. So Bitcoin is 96,326 average entry, stop by candle close 89899 take you. See Ether, the same Ether, surprisingly yesterday fell with a large reserve, even pricked stop, the so-called stop trigger. By the way, this checks your attention and how well you listen and read what I'm writing. Every stop that I mention, I've said this many times, it closes not when it touches the red line, but based on the closing of the candle, in this case, below it for a long position or above it for a short, if I were shorting. There are no other options. So here, if you listened to me and did everything right, your stop wouldn't have been triggered, and now your position in Ethereum is sitting at a small loss. There are no other options. That is, here, if you listened to me, you did everything correctly, your stop was not knocked out and now the position is at a small loss on the air. Solana also had a stop stitched. Here the situation is twofold. I'm not going to remove Solana for now. It's trading about 50% down. I mean from the entry point to the stop point. Before the stop point we have minus 12.8. Now it is trading somewhere around minus 7%. I won't be moving the stop point halfway either. If it gets triggered, it gets triggered. I couldn't care less. Before this, we had several months of profitable trades without any losses at all, with a huge margin on profits for the same reason. Especially considering what happened yesterday with Total 3, which was a correction of 17.5%, nearly 20%. I've been warning about this correction for a while now, that sooner or later it would happen. It happens, it can happen, although again, I did say yesterday that overall the sentiment was quite neutral, slightly bullish, and I don't think there'll be a crash. If we look at some of the coins, there really wasn't any crash. I've been warning about this correction for a long time, that sooner or later it would happen. It happens, it can happen, although again, I did say yesterday that overall the sentiment was quite neutral, slightly bullish, and I don't think there'll be a crash. If we look at some of the coins, there really wasn't any crash. Coins like Ethereum, Solana, and a few others. But the aviation stocks were really stable and didn't drop as much. Some coins have dropped by those very 20 to 50% from their peaks that I mentioned. So, in the end, I can admit that I was mostly wrong yesterday. I was wrong in thinking that this small bit of funding was enough for such a deep squeeze. And in this squeeze, basically, if those who jumped in right at the very highs, well, the third leverage got hit. The second ones hardly got touched anywhere, but the third ones did. Provided you jumped in at the very highs. What now? So, what's going to happen now? And what are my plans? Right, so look, as they say, dominance bounced back nicely yesterday. Well, the altcoins took a hit, and the money shifted into Bitcoin. So, regarding liquidations, we had a record on December 5th during the Korean dump when nearly $1 billion worth of longs got liquidated, with the average platform being 12 in the system. Last night, well, and already into today, that figure was a bit lower, with $57 billion worth of longs liquidated. It's cooled down in the system. Last night, yesterday, and already tonight, this figure was a little lower. $57 billion of longs were liquidated. Multiply that by about the same leverage, the sentiment there hasn't changed for Bitcoin, but there'll be more than $500 million in liquidations. There's been a convergence, or rather, hidden divergence. The peak was lower than yesterday. What's important here is that there's been a convergence, or rather, I apologize, it's called hidden divergence, when you look at the liquidations. The peak was lower than yesterday's peak. To be precise, that was yesterday's peak. So, we're moving along with this convergence, and the indicator is showing us a new peak that's lower than the previous one. So, the spring is getting compressed, which is already a bullish sign. Overall, we've seen two major liquidations. I've been looking at the chart since the start of November, since the Trump pump, and yes, indeed, these are the two largest liquidations. But there might have been something similar around here, around the 14th to 15th of November. So far, these are the two largest liquidations. This is a good sign globally. This is the cleansing of the market, the disembarking of unnecessary passengers, and it will be easier to move forward. I've mentioned this before as well. Funding overall, even before, was pretty low, around 0.15, 0.02. I'm looking at a 3-hour smoothed hourly chart, so that's a triple moving average, and now it's dropped right down to the bottom. Right now, these are the funding rates with a 3-hour smoothing. Here they are. Here's the current figure. So, if we take the context of this entire bull movement, this is the lowest point. The lowest funding rate. Here. This funding value has always been a support level. We broke through it once, and then we had a quick bounce back. And this is a global support level for the bull market. The same could be said about March. We also had some sort of global support that we were holding on to. 1, 2, 3, 4. We broke through here, recovered, and we stayed down for quite a while. The trend has changed. Everywhere in bull markets, there are very similar support levels. The year 21 is a support level for funding. So, what have we got here? It was very indicative for the bull market. We've set some lows that we haven't dropped below. Right. That's it. Support. So, that's why now, basically, we've reached a certain level where some fluctuations might come from. I'll explain that now, but for the moment, I'm only looking at the blockchain. So, basically, even that movement was enough to clear the market to a certain level. You could say they were buying on a support level, on a cushion, on a paper, call it what you like. It's telling that this is a chart showing the transfer of bitcoins from their wallets to the exchange, specifically by short-term holders who are moving it at a loss. So, they took it off the exchange, well, at some price they bought it, and now they're transferring it at a lower price. So, remember I mentioned when we had the drop to 92,000 right here, that it was likely the bottom? Well, it turned out to be just that. Well, right now we've got a similar peak to yesterday's dump, a very similar peak, and the short-term holders were really locking in their losses. So, these are the short-term holders. There's no influence. From MTGOX here, it's a clean chart. 15,500 bitcoins transferred. There were two tranches there, at 16.5 and at 15.5 and at 15.5 and at 15.5 and at 15.5 and at 15.5. Yesterday it was just one tranche, but it was also very high, a very telling peak. When we see such peaks in crypto, it's usually either a local bottom or something close to it. Yeah, it can be updated, it can, but not by much. And with some sort of convergence drawn, we could turn back up. And something cool. This is a chart showing the transfer of bitcoins specifically by long-term holders. Profits on the exchange. Their fear of yesterday's movement and how heavily they were locking in their profits. Also, an hourly slice. Right, we're getting rid of this straight away. This is MT. So, these are the reasonable numbers. There you go. So, these kinds of peaks aren't that rare. There was profit-taking here, there was profit-taking here, and there was profit-taking here. So, they do it periodically. These profit-takings are significant. You can't call them small, but they're not extreme. They don't represent anything particularly significant from this density, from this fluctuation of all these profit-takings. Of particularly great importance. Probably the biggest fixation was right here, the largest one. So, there was some sort of correction in the profit fixation, after which there was also a turnaround back up. We can take a look at March just out of curiosity. It's the same here. When fixations go down, the price goes up. We have divergence and we fall. Right now, if we disregard the MTGOX exit and this false spike, we can generally say that there's a decrease in peaks, while the price is increasing. But unlike in March, this price increase is more gradual, more gentle, and it looks more like a consolidation, rather than a global reversal. So, it's not really an unloading before a global turnaround. The movement here was more pronounced. And here's the overall picture. So yesterday, basically, you can see everything was in the red. There's a bit of a weak red, like with BNB and Solana. Something's really in the red. AVAX, Cardano, Ripple, DOT, Stellar, Doge, Ling, everything affected. Medium-term positions are unaffected. Total 3 chart in March. This happened before, like March 5th consolidation. That this is normal, even if we take this 24-hour chart, daily chart for total 3, for the capitalization of coins on the March shot, that is even. This movement, it happened by itself. For example, there was a large fixation on March 5th, and smaller fixations were here, for example. Here, there was a consolidation in January, just before the Bitcoin ETF approval, which led to a continuation of the bullish flag, and then we shot up further. I'm specifically talking about the medium term. We usually break or test the high immediately. A wheat. Remember, I recorded a video mentioning that we usually break through the high or test it immediately, going down or testing levels, breaking the historical high, then returning to support levels. That's exactly what's happening now. We're witnessing it right now. Right now, we're witnessing this. The correction, yes, for total 3 from the peak was nearly 20%. I'm looking at the weekly candle, not the daily one, from the very peak. Across the whole total 3. So basically, this is a healthy correction. According to the indicators, we've gone over 80 on the RSI. We've dropped to the 70 mark, bounced back, and basically, after hanging around here for a bit, we could push on further, and that's likely what will happen. How could that be? Let's go back to the daily chart. So, for now, we're still within the bounds of the green global uptrend channel. We're still in that range. In fact, this red candle from yesterday looks very much like this candle. Then we have the finale and distribution. We can move within this channel as long as we stay in it. The negativity lies in just one thing. The trend was technically going like this. 1, 2, 3, and here we broke it yesterday. We broke it. The volume on the break in total 3 wasn't the strongest. It was even below average. But it's still a technical break, and the candle is, well, more neutral, probably slightly bearish. But it does have a body. We closed with the body. So here, again, from my experience, how can I say how it happens? Either we gradually move up towards the monthly R3 pivot, then we drop again somewhere around here, but we don't breach this low, and we go on to make a double bottom, hitting a historical high. Or we have a slight correction, hang around here for a bit, then drop again, updating this low, but not by much, and then we turn around and head back up, possibly through another reversal pattern. Either we have a slight correction, hang around here for a bit, then drop again, updating this low, but not by much, and we turn around, heading back up, well, through another reversal pattern. The meaning will be the same. I can't guess what the next option will be. I just don't know. It will heavily depend on tomorrow's inflation data and the supply decision. On the 17th to 18th of December. A lot will depend on that. But the very fact that this level, roughly speaking, will act as support, from which further movement towards breaking the ATH will happen, gives me a lot of confidence because I can see it in the blockchain and the overall technical picture. We might not even breach this logic. Maybe. Why? Because if you look at how these movements are going, with total 3, we've just touched this 30-day moving average. I use it in BB. BB stands for Bollinger Bands, since the whole pump, since the Trump pump. And we didn't even touch it, we just fell a bit short. If we look, we see similar impulses with the altcoins. Similar impulses. So, here we have the start of the pump, and again, we just fell short of the BB. Here we touched the 30, bounced back, and as soon as the 50 starts to narrow with the 30, that's when we begin to break through it with some margin. That's it. This movement happened, remember it. A very similar movement to October 1923. It's on the move, it's on the move, it's on the move. We just fell a bit short of the 30. Let's go. Just fell short of 30. Let's go. We touched 30. 50. The 30 has tightened up. We hit the 50. They were chopping it up. That's it. And we moved on further. Almost to the 100th. That is, as a rule, we touch 30 once or twice in such movements before we even go down to 50. And sometimes it doesn't even reach 30, just a bit short. The same can be said for some sort of S-DON from 2021. I don't have it here, but it was the same for Bitcoin. You can check that. So, in my personal opinion, this movement in the middle of my Bollinger Bands, just to clarify, Bollinger Bands is what I'm referring to, will hold the price, meaning it could go like this. Without an update, as I see it. Either we'll move a bit, update, touch on it, maybe push through the 30, but not touch the 50 and then shoot up further. So, those are the two scenarios. But again, to be able to handle this mentally and psychologically, I constantly take profits. All the time, you see this constantly in the Telegram channel. I closed one thing, then another. I'm specifically talking about medium-term positions. Specifically about medium-term. I don't just sit around hoping that I'll catch some kind of high one day and everything in my life will be fine. That doesn't happen. That never happens. I'm always on the move. So, for example, even the position. On VeChain, 3 global take profits have been closed, and what kind of pullback was there? And there's only 25% of the position left. That's it. For the entire pullback. I got 25% of the position, not 100%. The same with CTUM, and so on. I'm always taking profits. It's not just like that. It's a standard approach for medium-term investments. We buy in parts, we close in parts, because we'll never guess where the true bottom and the true high will be. We can only operate with accompanying events. Right. So, still, what can I summarize at the end of this video? I've pulled it back to 17 minutes again. Well, it's quite important. The stick from yesterday is a good cleansing of the market. Yeah, it broke the technical daily trend. There's a chance we could move into this zone. Yes. How so? Either straight away, or through a deeper bounce without going into this zone. It's quite possible to hold on. That was the low. Mark was low. That could also happen. But if we get there, there will be perfect points to add on the weekly time frames. Here will be the perfect points to add. We can't go any lower. We absolutely can't go any lower. The correction on Total Tree is basically under 20%. It's sufficient. Sufficient for cleansing. You can trade this correction, but it's not a must. There was 10% here. I'm just looking at the classic bulls. There was 8% here. So, there was actually 17% on Total 3 here, but it didn't happen in just one day. It unfolded over the whole of January when they were selling the news. And here we basically got such a drop with just one candle, or maybe two. Percent here. Next, March. March has passed. Here's a similar candle, a similar cleansing. 16%, even less than the current one. Here it's less than 16%. 10. And then Iran launched an attack on Israel. Yeah, there's definitely a trend change here. So, basically, I reckon that all the current events will revolve around this candle. It's around this range, with a spike, or maybe just a bit lower, or even without a spike at all. That's it. I think this is where the whole drop will stop. And then, after a certain consolidation, we'll head upwards. This is global. As for all the positions in the Telegram channel, I specifically post the entry points, stop losses, take profits, and how to close them. The link to the Telegram channel is in the description below this video. Thank you all for your attention. Don't worry, everything will be fine. The main thing is to use leverage correctly. Don't take 25x leverage. I think many have realized today that this won't lead to anything good, because everyone who took on high leverage has been wiped out of the market. And many of you, including, I'm sure. Well, that always happens on movements like that. Have a good day. Mozart signing off, goodbye.